Welcome to another episode of UnMasked, where we go into the stories of everyday people, athletes, and celebrities in their battles with depression in the hopes of finding a better place for people. Today we have a very special guest, a fellow countryman of mine. Our accents don't sound anywhere near the same. Ellenor Argyropoulos, welcome.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm enjoying your accent quite a bit. It's like moments where I'm like, there it is. And I'm like, what is that?
I don't know. It drifts in and out. Like I said, it confuses people. People will say, "Oh, you're not from around here, are you?" I'm like, "No, I'm from Australia." And they're like, "No, I meant you're from Boston, right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm actually from Australia. I used to ride kangaroos as a kid. I get it."
Yeah. I love it. Hey, you're unique. You're special.
Yeah, I try to be sometimes.
Hey, there it is.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Tell us who you are. Tell us who is Ellenor.
Who is Ellenor? What a loaded question. Ellenor is I'm Australian, as we gathered, and I am a person that is extremely ambitious, who suffers from a lot of anxiety because my ambition is pretty intense. I don't think a lot of people understand what ambition anxiety is, but it's a thing. But no, really, I'm a filmmaker. So I'm a director and a photographer as well. Photography is kind of just like a passion of mine that I just use as such stress relief between directing and working on projects. So I have a female-driven production company called Mermaid Toast, which I co-founded and run out here with a bunch of really cool people. And we work in commercials, a lot of comedy commercials. Those YouTube infomercials that come up and you always want to skip past them. Well, I'm just okay, well, if I'm going to sit through this and watch it, I might as well make it entertaining, and let's do something fun with it. So, I moved to LA about 3.5 years ago, worked in commercial and working in commercials amongst all the other things that I do. But aside from that, film is kind of my love, my number one baby love, so I'm working on a couple of narratives and documentary things that just in the works, happening. So yes, that was a loaded question with a very long answer, but that is who I am. I do a lot of things.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your anxiety.
Yeah.
Straight
into it.
Yeah, straight into it. I mean, that's why we're here today.
Yeah. Totally.
Did you? Prior to moving to LA, which is a huge move. I've done it, so I know what kind of stresses and what kind of toll it takes on the mental health sometimes. But did you have anxiety or any type of depression before you moved here?
I feel like I did. I just probably wasn't aware of it. Let's answer that properly. I definitely did. I just wasn't aware of it. That's basically it. Yeah. So I was aware that I think I had depression at one point because I always had this sense of a fear of missing out, and just living in Australia, which has a pretty small film industry. I always knew I wanted to be in LA. From a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. Very, very young. So for me, I think, I definitely had several years there where I was depressed more than I was anxious. I thought my anxiety was just my energy and the quirkiness that I have, I guess.
Yeah.
So the depression was kind of a thing I was aware of very lightly, mildly. But it wasn't a deep, intense thing that I think I really understood what it meant, or what it was, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And you think that, the way you were feeling was kind of more attributed to your situation of you obviously wanted more in your career, you want to do great things. Obviously I understand that coming from Australia, there's only so much you can do with the resources and the people around you, especially the culture there. And, Yeah, I understand that completely.
Yeah, I mean, I love Australia. Like weirdly, like I worked in tourism Australia. I got to travel our country and it was amazing. So it was kind of this really interesting thing where like I had these awesome experiences when I was home that absolutely shouldn't be knocking at all because they were incredible for me. But it was like this sense of like I don't belong here and I belong somewhere else, I think. You know, and that was depressing at the time because it was just like, okay, what next? And what next? And what next? And so that caused a bit of depression. Yeah.
No, I get that. Okay, so
yes.
You know, you're in Australia. You've got this opportunity to move here and do what you love and basically create the path for you moving ahead. What did that transition do to your mental health? Do you think that helped you? It triggered your anxiety? Like how did that work for you?
It's interesting. It's like, for me, it was totally the best thing ever, right? It was like, it really, really helped my anxiety. The problem I had was, so to kind of like explain a little bit more, I was kind of in the space of putting my life on hold until I moved to LA. So that was a really interesting thing because I always thought like when I go to LA, that's when my life is going to begin. Lo and behold, my life was fantastic and I was living it back home and I was getting all these amazing opportunities, but it was just different. So when I finally moved here, it was like kind of a sense of relief. Like I finally felt like I was truly happy. Actually, it was the opposite of it's like it. At the time, it was like it cured my depression and anxiety, right? I was like, cool.
Yeah.
But then like you realize you have to start all over again. And I had a lot of friends here and I did a lot of work before I like moved here. Like I would make trips to LA 3 times a year. Really made sure I didn't have that first year that everyone talks about, not having friends, all that kind of stuff. I had the friends. I had everything.
Yeah.
And so what I found out was when I moved here, it totally like, and I'm not going to say cured, but at the time I thought that was the word for it. It really helped me. Mentally, until I started getting really burnt out because I was so anxious to achieve everything and do everything in this city and be everywhere all at once. That's actually when my anxiety got really, I started becoming slightly aware of it. And then the pandemic hit, and I became very aware of it. but yeah,
I think that's the culture of LA, and also one of the reasons why I moved is like there's this constant, perception of like you always have to be doing something. Like if you're taking a day off or taking an afternoon off, like you're not working, you're lazy. And I think that contributes to a lot of, like you said, the burnout, the depression, the mental health issues, especially that I see in the industry. It's like, if you're not doing something, then you people see you as like, well, they're failing, they're not doing anything, like they're so no, I completely understand that.
Yeah, I think I really like, and it's something I still really struggle with too, because it's just like there is this place that has so much opportunity and there's so many people that come here that are like, I'm a filmmaker, and I would keep meeting these people. I'm like, okay, cool, like what are you doing to do that? They're like, I just moved here to do that. And I was like, okay, that's great. So it's like, it just feels like I'm wasting my time if I'm not making the most of every single moment, which then, so yeah, I get that.
Yes. So you're more of like, the quantity over quality, type of, meeting people back at that stage.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It was like, I was trying to find a bit of both, but it was just crazy.
So during this, let's just talk about like the pre-pandemic, like this burnout phase. Like, what were you struggling with? Like, was it, was the anxiety up? Like you didn't want to leave the house? What type of emotions would you go through on a daily basis? Pre-pandemic.
My daily basis emotions were I never wanted to be home. I was really struggling with being home and being by myself, actually. So I moved in. I mean, I lived with my best friend for the first year here, who's a screenwriter, and we worked together. And she's freaking amazing. And it was like, I enjoyed that because I need noise, right? I feel like I'm constantly, I guess because I'm so creative, I'm constantly escaping being in my own head, because I know that I have been in dark places before. Not necessarily places where I wanted to go hurt myself or anything like that, but just not feeling good about myself and like self-esteem, because I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. And people weren't seeing my value on a personal level as a friend, but also just like from a creative perspective. I feel like this is kind of, I don't know if this is trailing off your question, but what I was struggling with was like, I think it was just, I was just constantly trying to distract myself. And I would justify that by going out and just being busy constantly, because I just don't do well with being by myself, because I'm scared of being in a place where I didn't feel so good, you know? And so that was kind of pre-pandemic me, was just like, I have to make the most of everything. If I'm at home, I'm not moving forward. And I could be moving forward, like working on my computer, script writing, whatever it is, but that felt very isolated. And I spent a lot of time in Australia being isolated in my own head. So the opposite was what I wanted, you know, when I was here. It's just be busy, go out, exhaust yourself. And I was exhausted. I'm truly drained. I made too many friends, if there's such a thing, you know, and it was a lot. I felt like I was a power outlet that was being drained. People were plugging into and draining me of like lots of things, because I was giving so much of myself to so many other things that were not myself, if that makes sense. So that's what I was struggling with. Yeah.
Did you feel like, you know, I mean, obviously being in LA and working in film and television, like, you know, people take advantage of you. You know, like they're not their authentic self. They always have ulterior motives. Like, did that impact how you felt about yourself? You know, things like that. Kind of.
I mean, it's a weird one, because it's like, I think a lot of people would, like, I'm a very bubbly person and I'm very excited.
I get that.
Yeah. And I get like, and I kind of had this fear of like, I don't know, this is kind of, I don't know if this answers your question, but I just had like I would have a lot of people that would come to me like, you give me inspiration because you're like so excited all the time. And then they would kind of like take a lot of my energy and my ideas and things and kind of run with it and do it themselves, or like everything just felt very transactional. And so that really affected me. Yeah. And that made me realize I kind of needed to change how I interacted with people, you know? Because
more cautious.
Yeah, I was. I became a little, well, it's funny because I say that, but I'm also still not. I became not cautious. I would probably do the same things, but I just became a bit more irritable. And then that was really like something that I would keep internal. So I think I would still project the same self and think that I was shifting how I interacted with people. But in fact, what was actually happening was I was just becoming angrier internally, exhausted, and just kind of like really keeping everything in because I was afraid that people would think I was a wanker if I showed any form of coldness, you know? And I think what I also learned was how Americans speak differently to each other than Australians. And how the way I have been brought up was, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just, directness was something I was really struggling with learning. How do I be direct with somebody without offending them? And that, as somebody who deeply cares about other people and deeply cares about, you know, I don't know, I guess how I present myself, that was something that was hard for me to deal with, because I felt like I had to change the way I was talking to people, but I wasn't. So I was just internalizing everything, and then I became a ticking time bomb of just bubbling anger, you know?
Yeah. So it kind of changed.
Yeah.
It's basically changed your personality DNA, basically.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to learn.
I mean, that's definitely one of the things I learned when I moved here too, is like, you know, there are certain things you can say, there's certain things you can't say.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went through a similar thing with you where I got angry too with, like, you know, just people, how they interacted with me, being transactional.
Yeah.
You know, wasting your time, whatever it might be. And then, after a while I just stopped caring. I went back to being my usual self, and I'm like, well, this is me. Like, take it or leave it.
Yeah. That's awesome. It takes. Yeah, that was hard for me. Yeah.
Okay, so pandemic hits.
Yep.
Everybody, basically, the whole country shuts down. In LA, it was kind of different because, you know, there were obviously there were different levels of the pandemic across the country, and you know, how each state and city handled it. But LA was pretty brutal in terms of, like, you know, the isolation and you know, things people couldn't do. You know, what was that experience like for you?
So I had a really interesting pandemic experience. I mean, I guess for me, because I spent the first 6 months of the pandemic in Australia. I got stuck there. So I went home to renew my visa, spend Easter with my family, and then just couldn't come back. So I kind of started the commercial aspect to my production company while I was in Australia, like on Zoom calls every day. I was working on a documentary that I've been trying to get up and running. I like worked really, really hard when I was home. Nothing hit me. I was like, okay, pandemic, probably having the best year of my life right now creatively, because everybody can leave me alone, and I actually am forced to just like be isolated and just work. So that's how the pandemic started for me. It's a horrible thing to say, but for me, like, from a creative perspective, it was great. It was awesome. Well, the situation wasn't awesome. Let's you know, the whole thing. But from that perspective, I was fine. And then I came back to LA, and that was a very hard time, because when I came back, things were starting to open up here, but kind of not, but kind of, and I was very scared of COVID, like really just didn't want to go anywhere. So I locked myself in my apartment for 7 months. I barely went out. Yeah, barely. Some of my best friends lived across the street, wouldn't even go have coffee with them. I was just like kind of taking on like, okay, like, you're lucky to be living in LA. You're lucky to have been able to come back into the country from spending 6 months being stuck in Australia. You've worked really hard. Keep working. So I came back, and I would be at my computer all day, every day. And I would wake up and I'd be on my computer, and I would go to bed at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd just been staring at a screen all day. And at first it was fine. It was totally fine. We were getting jobs, we were creatively starting to get very successful. It's like, great, this is all I ever wanted. Like, I'm figuring it out. Freaking woohoo, you know? And then I started, this is gonna sound really funny, but I basically became allergic to my apartment. Like, I was stuck inside so much that my apartment would gather like dust mites, and the humidity in LA is pretty crap, right? It's not the best. Yeah. So I don't have a central aircon, so I just have like, you know, a couple of little things, and that's it. And so I basically had like a really bad, like full-blown allergic situation to my apartment. And I started getting mini injuries from like being inside all the time. Like, I got carpal tunnel in both my hands. I did my back. I'm like, guys, I'm like 29 at the time, 30. Like, what the fuck's happening? You know, like, and so so from then everything went downhill, because then I became very afraid of them going out even more. I became afraid of everything. And then what would happen is I then got to a place where I was talking about before, distracting myself, going out a lot, not really like listening to my body and trying to listen to me. I was now by myself, by situation, like fully 100% by myself. And I was choosing that as well, because other people were like, it's fine, it's pandemic, we'll go hang out. I'm like, no, I'm not even doing that. And I had to confront a lot of the fact that I was not okay, and why I don't know how to explain it, but I basically got mad anxiety, because I was just like, things were finally starting to take off on the career and the mental health completely declined. And I think that would have happened without the pandemic anyway, to be honest, because it's like my brain went into this overdrive of how do I keep up? And so I'm so used to getting no's and no's and no's and fighting. My brain basically went into this mode of like trying to find reasons to fight. And then the pandemic situation made it even worse. And so I was just locked in my own head the whole time. So it was really hard. That's when I really became aware of everything. Yeah.
So what was that, you say you became aware of everything, you became aware of, how bad your mental health has got. Like what were those thoughts in your head? Like, what was that breaking point where you were like, fuck, I need to do something, I'm not well.
Yeah. So what happened was I was confronting the fact that I've never really been in a relationship, because I had put that on hold for my career, right? I was always like, one day I'll get there. One day I'll get there. One day I'll get there. My work comes first. This is it. And so when I got really sick, by being in my apartment all the time, I had nobody to take care of myself. I was on the floor shaking from panic attacks. I have very physical anxiety, so I basically become paralyzed. I can't move half my body. I've had brain scans for it before. So that's the thing, like back in Australia where I said I didn't realize my anxiety, like I had 2 times where I was in hospital getting brain scans for MS because I was losing full feeling in half my body. And people couldn't understand why. And I couldn't understand why. And nobody could tell me why. And they were like, oh, I think it's probably anxiety or depression, whatever. And I was like, okay, fine. Moving on. What do I do? There's nothing I can do about this. Let's move on. Let's just think positive. Think positive and it'll go away. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm like, let's just think positive.
Yeah.
So that was what was happening to me then. But this time, I was on the floor calling the ambulance to come up to my apartment with no support around me other than myself. Like, my family's far away. They can't do anything. I can't move. I'm physically like, my whole body was vibrating. That had to happen a few times where I was like, okay, this is now, like, I'm scared. I'm really scared because I'm not in control of my everyday. And it was when I couldn't get up in the morning as well. It was like, if the hospital ambulance brain scans wasn't enough, I would just be like, okay, something wrong with me physically. Like, there's just something wrong with my body. It's another thing. But it was then I can't get out of bed because I'm thinking about how I wish somebody was here next to me to take care of me. How somebody was, I would just then go into all the missed opportunities in my life that I've put for my career on hold, sacrifices that I've made. That was when it really scared me. And I would take Zoom meetings with clients and I wouldn't be able to focus. I would start shaking. I think when it was like, to answer your question, sorry, simply because I talk so much.
No, you're fine.
My project that I've been working on, this documentary, it's been my whole life. It's kind of like my savior from everything. Like, that's my escape, right? So when I realized, like, if it wasn't for the hospitals and all of this and the shaking and all that kind of stuff, when I started shaking in meetings with and interviews I was doing for this documentary, that's when I knew something was very, very wrong. Like, that was when I was like, okay, I actually really need help. Like, I already knew something was wrong, but the trigger to get help was when it was creeping into what I thought was my safety zone, because that was my passion project. That was my life. That was my soul. And now it's not making me happy. Why? Why is that happening? So that was when I really snapped into needing help. Yeah.
So that was your rock bottom?
That was my rock bottom. Yeah. Yeah, it scared me.
So what did you do next? Like you said that you realized you needed help.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I went to therapy. I'd had a therapist once before who didn't really help me back in the day. It was more just because like I was having brain scans and I was like, oh, whatever, I'll go talk to a therapist. Let's move on, whatever. This time I was like, I need to find a therapist now, like literally today. So what I did was I called up a bunch of friends. I went to the urgent care and I was like, somebody please help me find a therapist, someone who really knows their shit. And I managed to get on a Zoom call and talk to somebody literally that day because I couldn't function. And I didn't have insurance to pay for it. It was so expensive. And I was like, I need this, even if it's just temporary. I knew I needed a therapist, but I really felt like I needed medication at that point. Didn't know what medication would do. Didn't really know anybody who'd been on any or anything like that. I was just like, I need to fix this. I need to fix this immediately. So
that initial session help? Like
it did because I felt seen. It was just finally like, I mean, it was quick and all it was just like, okay, somebody's here to help me talk about this. I'm not going crazy. I'm not going crazy. Because I was talking to my friends about it and everything, and nobody really got it at all. And so that therapy session really helped because that person was like, you're not crazy. This is what you're experiencing. And what that person told me was like, this is how anxiety works on your brain. And they weren't just like there to listen. They were like trying to teach me at the same time, which really helped me kind of understand what was happening.
So you have to like identify things that trigger your anxiety and have the tools to manage them. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I think that's also something, the difference between, Australian culture when it comes to mental health and American culture is like, there's this stigma coming from Australia where people don't reach out and go to therapy unless, unless they think there's something really, really wrong with them. Whereas here it's kind of like more encouraged, like you should go speak to somebody. Whether they medicate you or not is a different story. But there is a really big cultural difference between the two, and that's something that I learned when I was living over there as well. It's like you're not taught to go and speak to a therapist. You're taught to man up or get over it or smile or it's things like that.
It's like a sign of weakness. People see it as.
Yeah.
And the people I had around me were very supportive, like verbally and everything, and they were like, you're such a positive person, and I really truly am, or at least try to be. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't be positive about this situation, and that was the depression voice in my head. It just wouldn't let me be positive at all. Everything was bleak and dreary, and I'd had friends in the past who had been depressed, and I'd be like, okay, come on, like, let's just go out for coffee. Like, it's going to help, and they'd be like, I literally can't get out of bed. And I could never understand it. Like, come on, like, get out of bed, it's fine. And then here I am going, oh shit, that was the advice I gave people. And now I know what that's like. It's very,
So after that initial session, did you continue seeing the therapist?
Yes and no. Like I did so basically what happened was I got given advice before I even saw the therapist to just get on meds because meds would fix me, right? Yeah. So I went to a doctor and got prescribed Lexapro. I was like, cool, fab, let's pop that. And I also, by the way, hate medication. I never take medication. Even if it's a Panadol and I have a headache, or Panadol, we're Australian. Jesus, ibuprofen, whatever it is here, I would never do it. So for me, I was I really got to a bad place. So I actually just thought the therapist was still just kind of weirdly, what actually, I saw the therapist for about 4 or 5 sessions. But what actually helped me was talking to other friends about anxiety and depression. I don't think I had the right therapist in the end, to be honest with you. I think it takes time to find the right person. That can also scare people.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like it's like it's a match. You're dating. It's like being with somebody, right? Like you've just got to be able to. Yeah.
It's a pretty intimate thing, you know. Like you're sharing details about what's going on inside your head every day. It's like you don't want to just tell it to somebody that you don't feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think like. For me, my decision to stop therapy was purely just because I'd gotten to a better space where I could talk to the people I needed for me around me to like help me. I think therapy is fantastic. I don't think it is for everybody, but it was there right when I needed it. And I do want to go to therapy again, but I'm going to take some time trying to find the right person, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. So,
but it still gave you initially gave you some really good tools to just to jumpstart you.
It basically like helped me kind of like just disarm it. You're just speaking it out loud. Like when I spoke it out loud, I have anxiety, I have depression. That within itself was so liberating. Just really going, I'm going to confront this. If I speak it out into existence, I'm robbing it slowly of its power, because now I identify what it is, and now I know what that little fucker is. I know how to like try and find a way to tackle it, you know. So it was it really helped me just to be seen. And I think that's the point of like even what you're doing here, like what we're doing is conversation. I think pre-pandemic, we were in a space where people were scared to talk to each other about this kind of thing. I mean, I come from a Greek family, the friends around me, like we said, there's certain like stigmas to things. And I think the one thing that's happened over the last year and a half is just people kind of having a little bit of empathy and trying to talk to each other. And I think that's a really good thing. So yeah, the therapy helped me just by speaking it out loud. From that regard.
So that's how you manage it on a day-to-day basis, is like, confronting it, speaking it out loud. Like, do you have any other tips or tools that you use? Any things like music or apps?
So I can't deal with meditation. I get very bored.
Same. That's my ADD.
Okay. It's funny because it's like when you get depressed or like have anxiety, I mean, I don't know about you, but everyone's like, meditate. You got to meditate. Yeah. And I'm like, that's all cool and well, but like, that's just not like I've tried. And that for me just makes me like go even more insane because I'm like in my head even more and I get bored. So like that was you know what? If meditation works for you, fantastic. It doesn't work for me. So I think for me, like my advice was, I actually really was like, I think what helped me get out of the anxiety was literally just like talking to my friends about it or making new friends by starting a conversation about depression and anxiety. Like I would go to like a bar or an event. I'd just start talking to people and literally one of the first topics of conversation would be like, hi, how are you? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. I would literally just start talking about anxiety because it made me feel better about like, if I was shaking in that situation and because I had anxiety and I was like, how do I get through this? Like, I can't breathe. Like, how do I move forward? Yeah. By saying like, hey, just so you know, like I'm going through a really weird phase right now. I've been in my head for a little while. I'm shaking a little bit. It's got nothing to do with you. I'm just going through some anxiety I'm trying to understand. So just be patient with me. Like, weirdly, like I've actually met some of my best friends just by like starting a convo that way. I'm not even joking. Like, because somebody, like I guarantee you that other person will probably be like, I appreciate that. And I've gone through that before, or I know somebody who's gone through that before. And then that within itself robs anxiety and depression of its power in that moment, because there's this thing that's trying to control you, that's pushing you away from this situation. It's going, you're thinking like this, why are you thinking like this? And then you go in a loop, and then all of a sudden you speak it and somebody's like, oh, I know what that's like, it's cool, I got you. You're like, oh, yeah. And then that kind of just slowly dissipates. So that helps me a lot. Now to the point where I don't need to do that as much anymore. Yeah.
You remind me, because I mean, about 5 years ago, before we moved down here, I was similar to you, like, burn out with the industry, burn out with people.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was socially disabled, basically.
Yeah.
And then similar to you, this kind of defining moment was like, no, I need people to live. I need people, especially with what I did for a living.
Yeah.
And I just made a point of, like, every single day I just go talk to a stranger. Doesn't matter what it was about. Yeah, awesome. It was good, because, like, I was trying to get over, like, my fear of, everyone in LA has an ulterior motive. Everyone has a reason to fuck you over, and it's like, well, okay, not all humans are bad.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. And it started similar. It was just like, I'd go to Starbucks and I'd just chat with the whoever's making my coffee, or if I'm walking down the street and someone's walking a dog, I'd be like, oh, hey, nice dog, like, we just started a conversation there. But it was like every day it was like that promise, like, wake up, I'm going to talk to one stranger a day. And I did that for about a year, and it was I found that it helped. It's something that I've tried teaching some of my friends that have gone through similar, like, social anxiety. It's like, just try talking to one person a day, one person a week, like, and it helps.
So yours was like, because I think that thing that we were talking about before, it's like everyone does have that ulterior motive, and you just didn't know where you would have sat.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to my story, obviously, but I was burnt out. We had a couple of business ventures that kind of went sideways a little bit, mainly because of how humans are in general.
Right.
And I just at that point, like, because I'd already suffered from depression most of my life, it was just like, okay, well, that was just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And I was just a hermit for, like, months.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't care about running a business. I don't care about people. I don't care about making TV shows or films anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want to stay in bed. I want to watch South Park all day long. Like,
Yeah.
But
yeah. I think with me, it was like, to your point, it was like, when you lose your passion and the drive for your passion, that's when shit's scary. And that's when something's not okay. Like, I've never been why, what's the point? It literally is when that question, what's the point? When that comes along, fuck, man, that's when you're like, now I understand what this thing is.
Yeah, I mean, I've got friends going through some shit now that are like, they are so sick of their life, but they just don't want to get up out of bed every morning, even though they're working from home. It's like, what's the fucking point of getting up? Like, what's the point of trying? Like, too hard to buy a house in California because the market's stupid right now. Like, so what's the point of trying? Like, what's the point of, like, trying to make more money if it's just like, and it weighs on people,
Totally.
And once you lose that reason for getting out of bed every morning, it's like, well, something's wrong.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a scary time.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
So you think about all these things that you've gone through, like I mean, you found your rock bottom. Like, it was a incredibly shitty time for you. Like, what did you learn about yourself? Yeah, and what did you learn about your depression at that time and your anxiety?
I learned that, like, it's gosh, I don't even know. It's so much that I learned. I learned to take time to give myself some grace, and to just really, like, be a bit more, like, I always thought I was at one with myself. I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted to be. I knew what I wanted to do. I know what I like. I loved myself, right? It wasn't like I liked who I was. But I learned about how I was making choices, I think, and, like, how I was going about my day to day, where I was just like, I just needed to not run away from myself and just really give myself time to just allow myself to experience emotions, and then go, that's okay that you just experienced this. You don't have to try and go run off to a cinema screening so you don't have to feel it, and the only place you can feel it is in a movie. because that's where you're allowed to feel it. That was where I was kind of at. I was like living my life through movies and stuff because that's what I want to do for my career. So I would just like feel the feels in other formats, but not like just to distract myself from feeling them for myself, by myself. And so what I learned was it's okay to feel those things by yourself. Go cry in the shower. Literally cry in the shower. It's so awesome. It's amazing. Like
I don't think I've tried that one yet.
Yeah, it's the best. It's honestly the best. And like, you know, the music I would listen to was all like emo, punk rock, like fuck yeah, you know, and that's all good. I love that shit. And I still fucking love that shit. But like, lyrics and like whatever, but like here I am not being able to go to a concert to like shake it out. So where else can I put that energy? So go cry in the shower, listen to some cafe French music with no lyrics, shit that you can't understand, and let your dialogue kind of like I don't know, just not be afraid of it. I
get that.
I think that was what I learned, just to not be afraid of it and just go, okay, this is temporary. How do I make this work? You know? So,
say you have a time machine.
Yes.
You know, you can go back in time. You can meet your former self back when you started having, you know, when you started noticing that you had anxiety. Like, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give you?
I would tell myself it's gonna be okay. No, I would just, gosh, what would I tell myself? You know, I used to find it really helpful to like talk to myself like I'm a 6-year-old version of me, right? So like, I think I would go back to myself and just like, I would just tell myself like, hold your own hand, like it's gonna be okay, you know, and just like trust, trust, and just talk to people about what you're experiencing. So I don't know, it's a hard question because I really found talking to people helped me. And I think like what I would say is just like, even if it's not the right person, just keep talking to people about it and don't run away from it. Don't run away from it. That's it.
That's good advice.
So many
that's good advice.
I'm like, let me think. I'm thinking in real time here. I'm like, hang on, give me a second to actually think that through. No. There's a lot of things.
That's a really good answer. You know, like just I mean, stand up to yourself, basically. You know, stand up to what's going on in your head.
Yeah, I think for me, it was just like, I always thought there was like some ulterior motive, like a reason, like there's got to be a reason why this is happening. What's the reason why this is happening? Yeah. Or like, am I sick? Because there is this, and for me, it was like a medical health thing too. Like I literally was like, oh, this is not me. So therefore something must be wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. Why can nobody fix me? And I think there's this thing with like anxiety and depression and people just think it's so easily fixable. I thought that. I was like, well, let me take some medication, it'll fix me. Whoa, that was a trip. I mean, I'm very happy for it and it really helps me, but like, that's just not a switch that's just going to be flipped. And just because you are telling yourself like, this is not me, I think that's the wrong wording. Well, this is me. This is me in this moment. So give yourself grace to just allow time to understand what that looks like, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, what helped me.
So what's next for you?
What's next? Fun stuff. Just trying to keep creative. Yeah. No, I'm about to like, hopefully I'm going through funding for a documentary I'm very passionate about, which I mentioned before. It's like Formula One related and I'm obsessed with it. Like I'm just, you know, and it has its moments. Like literally saw this thing on Instagram the other day where it was like, this is what my journey looks like. And it's people climbing stairs and just go up, 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 up. And then it had underneath it, this is what my journey actually looks like. And then there was just like hills that literally went up and down and then really down and then up and down. So I've been working on this project for 6 years. And it's definitely a labor of love, but I fucking love it. And that is just, I'm going to make it. Like it's going to get made. So that's what's next. Yeah.
Well, if I've learned anything about you, it's you'll get there. You know, you'll fight tooth and nail to get there.
And there's a wilderness away. Yeah. No, that's I'm looking forward to just like I think just the person I'm becoming. I'm really quite at peace with myself now. So that's what's next, is just like becoming even more at one with that, taking more time for actual self-care, and then finding a balance between that and the creative projects. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Trying.
That's awesome. Well, Ellenor, thank you so much for coming on today.
Of course.
Telling your story. Yeah, it's an amazing story, and I think you're an amazing person.
Oh, thank you.
And you're destined for great things. You know, don't let your anxiety get the better of you, which I know you won't.
Thanks.
You know, you'll be fine.
Exactly. Like the motto for like everything. Literally, everybody will be fine. We just got to talk to each other. No, exactly. Thanks for having me, Brody. I really appreciate it. Of
course.
It was great.
Of course. And for those of you out there that are going through a shitty time, just, you know, talk to somebody, you know, have one more conversation, you know, give yourself one more day, you know, like things do get better. Yeah. You know, and if you can't find someone to talk to, DM me. Like I answer everything, unless it's spam.
Yeah, same.
Well,
I love talking to people. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. No, thank you for coming, Ellenor, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.